Okay, so let's talk about what you read yesterday in this set. So you probably noticed Unit 2 or Essay 2 is going to be an argument synthesis. So again, you're writing a claim and you're defending it with evidence. So this is our first research paper, but the way this works is I'm giving you all of the articles that you're going to cite. So this is the first of, I think, 3 or 4 essays that we'll read in the next 3 weeks. All of them are about sociological experiments when it comes to the degree to which someone will obey authority even when it runs contrary to what they believe. And so you're going to be writing an argument where you make a claim about the extent to which people will obey authority. And then you're going to draw evidence from these sources that we read and discuss in class. And so part of what we're going to do as we read through these essays is we're going to write an APA reference for each one. So you'll have the references list already built by the time you write the essay. And the point of a synthesis is you arrange it around main ideas and then you draw from different sources within each of those main ideas. So to truly synthesize means that the points dovetail. It's not that you're going to summarize this article and that's going to be paragraph 1 and then this article is going to be paragraph 2, but instead you draw evidence from multiple sources into one cogent analysis about a main idea. So that's going to be the point of this essay that you're writing. Again, APA format, 1,000 words. And so what you had in the introductory part is the introduction to Chapter 9 in writing and reading across the curriculum. And it introduces you to this idea about obedience to authority. And it's kind of hardwired into the human experience that we try to please people. We try to obey people, especially when that person is perceived as being an authority figure. And these experiments were conducted in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it's kind of interesting to look at the decade that they were conducted in and how social norms have changed throughout. So this first essay that you read was by Solomon Asch, and it was conducted in the 1940s, early 1950s, and it was a response to the Nuremberg trials. Now, someone remind me from U.S. history, what were the Nuremberg trials? What that was? It was in the aftermath of World War II. It was the trials for Nazi war crimes. And so one of the defenses that people who had executed thousands of people, so you've got these people working in concentration camps, and they were given the orders that you're going to put these people in the gas chamber, you're going to turn on the gas, and then you're going to take the bodies and you're going to bury them in mass graves. And they followed those orders. And their defense in most of that was, I was just obeying authority. Well, that wasn't a defense that justified their behavior, and so that many of them were executed themselves or imprisoned for the rest of their lives. So this is examining the degree to which someone will do something that violates their own conscience just because an authority figure tells them to do so. All right, so that's the design of Solomon Asch's essay. So turn to page 351. And it gives you that little excerpt there at the bottom. It says, in the early 1950s, Solomon Asch, a social psychologist. Let's talk about that term for just a moment. There are 2 branches of social science. So if you're getting a bachelor's degree, probably in your general education requirements, you will have to have so many classes in social sciences. Social sciences includes history, world history, U.S. history, geography, politics, government, and it includes psychology and sociology. So psychology is study of the individual, how the individual reacts, how the individual mind reacts. Sociology is how groups of people interact. So when you take those 2 branches of study and put them together, you get a social psychologist. So social psychology looks at how the individual behaves in social settings. So it's kind of a look with both lenses, looking at how group behavior and group dynamics work, and then looking at how that impacts the individual psyche as well. So that's what Solomon Asch is, a social psychologist at Rutgers University, conducted a series of simple but ingenious experiments on the influence of group pressure upon the individual. Essentially, he discovered individuals can be influenced by groups to deny the evidence of their own senses. Together with the Milgram experiments, which we're going to read that essay later, of the next decade, these studies provide powerful evidence of the degree to which individuals can surrender their own judgment to others, even when those others are clearly in the wrong. The results of these experiments have implications for beyond the laboratory. They can explain a good deal of the normal human behavior we see every day at school, at work, and at home. So it's about this social construct of how we operate as a society and how the basic fabric of our existence is tied to this idea of obeying authority. Now, the design of the experiment, just to oversimplify it, there would be a group of students, a group of individuals, and one person would be the subject. So let's say that Macy is our subject. She's not in on the experiment. She's outside the room while I'm explaining this to you. And so I tell everyone in here that I'm going to ask you, identify which of these lines is the longest. And everyone's going to give the wrong answer. And so Aiden's going to start, and he's going to say, that line is the longest. And then Sadie's going to say, that line is the longest. Clearly, you're giving the wrong answer, right? Your senses tell you, no, the middle line is the longest. Macy's going to be at the end of the line when she comes in, and she's going to hear everyone give the wrong answer. And so when it comes your turn, and I say, Macy, identify the longest line, what are you going to do? That's the experiment. What would you anticipate would be the response, like in an experiment like that? What would you expect someone in Macy's position to do? She's going to look at all the evidence and say, gee, there must be something wrong with me, right? I really think that that's the longest line, but I can't be the only one. I can't face 27 other people and say, oh my goodness, no, you all are all terribly wrong. So she's going to consistently provide the same answer that everyone else is. What does that tell you about group pressure? What does it tell you about groupthink? Is it hard to go against the grain? We talk about peer pressure from the time you're in kindergarten, right? And about not succumbing to peer pressure. But man, it's a powerful force. And if people are all of one mindset about something, it's hard to buck the system. It's hard to go against the grain. And so this experiment showed that for the most part, people are going to go with the majority. Now, he varied the experiment, and there were some factors that would change. And so if you had some people who disagreed, maybe there were 3 or 4 scattered throughout the group who said, no, I think that is the longest line. Then the subject would be more inclined to go out on their own and say, yeah, that is the longest line. So the number would make a difference in how many people would actually say the right answer. There were a few outliers who, when they would get to that person in the experiment, they say, you all are absolutely wrong. Those were few and far between. So the outliers who stood up and said what the correct answer was didn't happen very often. Now, in the next set of experiments that you read about, they were conducted in the 1960s, the Milgram experiments. And they're going to take this same experimental theory, but applied in a different context. The context of that experiment is everyone's in on the experiment except the person who's pushing a button to administer an electric shock. And so you're told by a tester that the person inside the booth is going to be asked some questions. And if they give the correct answer, you go on and you ask the next question. But if they give the incorrect answer, you administer an electric shock to them. And the more answers they give that are incorrect, you increase the voltage of the shock. What do you suppose people did? Zzz, zzz, zzz. They continued to shock people with increasing voltage, and the person inside the booth was in on the experiment so that they weren't really getting shocked, but they would pretend as if they were in great discomfort. The experimenter would say, you've got to continue the experiment or it's going to fail, and they would continue to shock the person inside the booth. The next set of essays that you read are by Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University. And we're actually going to watch a movie version of it. Have any of you ever watched the Stanford Prison Experiment? It's on Netflix. And then there's another version of it called The Experiment. And so they placed an advertisement in a college newspaper for college students to submit to a 6-week sociological study. They opened up a mock prison in the basement of a building at Stanford University, and it lasted for 1 weekend. So they came in and they assigned people arbitrarily, either you're a prisoner or you're a guard. And you are to assume the role of either being a prisoner or being a guard. and they fell into those roles and got so lost in the fact that they were part of an experiment that they nearly killed some of the prisoners and they had to stop the experiment. The degree to which people will obey an authority figure. So that's the whole point of this essay. Not only will you have these essays to draw from, but you can also use some of your own experience. Maybe you have examples of where you witnessed peer pressure, or you've been the victim of peer pressure, and what kind of force does that exert on people, and how does it change or manipulate how you think, feel, or believe about something. All right, let's look at the questions. I had asked you to answer questions 1 through 4, the review questions, so I'd like to spend just some time talking about those answers, thinking through those, and then thinking about how those could actually end up being part of the evidence that you choose for this essay. Number 1 says, what is suggestibility? What is that phenomenon? How'd you answer that? What is suggestibility?
Someone's ability to give into an opinion that's greater than theirs or be affected by something.
So it's just that tendency to accept someone else's position just by mere suggestion. So if someone suggests an opinion, suggests an action, there is a tendency to be influenced by that. It's the suggestibility. That's why people today can call themselves influencers. What does it mean if someone's an influencer, really? They can cause people to do stuff just by the power of suggestibility. It's like product placement in movies. Do you know that Coca-Cola will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for someone in a movie scene to be drinking a can of Coke Zero? Because it's suggestibility. It's not an overt advertisement, but the power of suggestibility is you see someone drinking a nice crispy Coke Zero, and you might go out front and pay $10 for a small Coke at the movie theater. So it's the power of suggestibility, the power, that tendency to make you think, feel, or believe a certain action. Influencers do it all the time. They get on TikTok or whatever platform they're using, they endorse a product, they review a product, or they just simply use a product and you say, I like that person, I want to be like that person, and so you end up being influenced by them. The follow-up to that is, how is this phenomenon related to social pressure? So how would you say suggestibility plays into group pressure? What might be some factors that would impact suggestibility?
Culture could.
Culture could be a big impact on that. What else?
Age.
Age, gender. Yeah, all these factors of who's doing the suggesting could impact it. Who are some of the social media influencers that you follow? Who influences you on social media? Does anybody know Kylie Pitts? You ever heard that name, Kylie Pitts? What does Kylie Pitts do? She just shows what she does in a day. Like it's the most mundane stuff you'll ever watch in your life. But she has made lots of money. She's monetized her social media accounts, and she was able to build a new house. She drives a brand new Tahoe. She has a newborn child. She has what appears to be a really good marriage, and she showcases that, and people like that because they want to have a good marriage and a child and a new house and a new Tahoe and drink Starbucks every day, right? And so she just shows her life, and she's monetized it, and because people tune in, they're influenced. And I got to preface that with her new house that she built was a modular home. So she bought essentially a double wide, a bougie double wide, and she's influenced people to buy double wides, trailers. And so there's a Kylie Pitts model that you can go buy. It's decorated by her. Why? Because of her influence. She's relatively young, early 20s, fairly successful, And people are influenced by that. Why? Because she has the power of suggestibility. She can suggest this is the kind of life that you want, and here's how you get to it. It also involves going into a lot of debt. So she really doesn't talk about that part of her power of suggestibility. So any influencer that you watch, that's what's behind it. It's the power of suggestibility. It says, summarize the procedure and results of the ASH experiment. What conclusions does ASH draw from these results? This is how you would summarize it, right? A series of lines were presented, obvious the answer, and people in on the experiment gave the wrong answer to see what kind of pressure that would exert on the person being tested. In all of these, there's one person who's being tested to see what their response is going to be. So what is the result? What was the conclusion that ASH drew from these experiments?
The larger the group, the more persuasive they were.
Yeah, the larger the group, the more persuasive they become in influencing your answer. And really, not just influencing your answer, but causing you to deny what you know to be the truth. Like, this is obvious. You deny your senses and give the wrong answer. And the size of the group certainly impacted that. To what extent did varying the size of the majority and its unanimity affect the experimental results? Parker's already answered that for us. It mattered greatly. So the larger the group, the greater the influence, and the more unanimous they were, the more solid it was going to be that you were going to give the wrong answer. And then number 4, what distinction does ASH draw between consensus and conformity? There's a difference between consensus and conformity. If we reach a consensus, what have we done? We've agreed by what process? How did we reach the consensus? It's Friday night. We're going out to eat. Where do you want to go eat? Where do you want to go eat?
The bistro.
Okay. Bistro, where else? Where else you want to go? I want to go to Little Taste of Texas. I want to go to Glasgow and Little Taste of Texas. Anybody want to go to Gondoliers? How are we going to come to a consensus? If we all agree that we're going to go to Applebee's, how did we get there? Because Macy doesn't get to go where she wants to go and I don't get to go where I want to go. How did we land on Applebee's?
We discussed it.
We discussed it, we talked about it, we may have fought about it, we may have raised our voices about it, but ultimately, what do we have to do? We have to debate it in order to do what? Somebody's going to have to give up. Somebody's going to have to give in. Somebody's going to have to relinquish their position and accept another position. That's consensus. Is consensus healthy in a relationship? I would imagine so, right? It's not that everybody gets their way, it's that we agree that this is the way we're going to go. So it may be that I get my pick this time, you get your pick the next time. But somehow, by mutual consent, we reach consensus. What's conformity? Conformity is we're eating at Little Taste of Texas no matter what you say. Right? That's conformity. Conformity is my way or the highway. What's the problem with conformity? What's the danger in conformity? Control. Dictatorial. It depends on who's calling the shots. That can be very dangerous for society. It can be very dangerous for government. It can be very dangerous for any number of organizations. If someone is acting in a overhanded way of just always getting their way. So there's a difference between consensus and conformity. So really the implication of this social psychological experiment is think about the degree to which you conform and agree just because of an authority figure or the degree to which you are involved in this process of attaining consensus. Our society is built on authority and obedience to authority, isn't it? When you drove to school today or rode to school today, did everybody drive on the right side of the road? Why? It's the law, and you obeyed the law. You conformed. What would happen if we just picked which side of the road we wanted to drive on? There'd be wrecks, be confusion, be anarchy, right? It'd just be willy-nilly. And so that's a social contract. Driving regulations are a social contract. You agree to give your left turn signal when you're turning left, and I agree to give my left turn signal when I'm turning left. That's a social contract that we have. And when you violate that social contract, guess what happens? People are going to beep their horn and show you their middle finger because you violated the social contract. People don't like it when you violate the social contract. Everything that we do is part of a social contract. You're sitting in chairs and I'm standing up because it's a social contract. Because I'm the teacher and you're the student. And you've agreed to listen to me because there's some sort of perceived authority that I have in this classroom. It's part of a social contract. If you didn't, we probably wouldn't learn very much in here because it would be chaos. So everything that you participate in, think about that as you go throughout the course of your day. How much of this is based on a social contract that we have with one another? We just agree to do this in order to have some sort of order in our society. You know, there are countries where you can drive on either side of the road, doesn't matter. Have you ever seen videos of those countries? Like there's just cars jam-packed everywhere, and like the buses in India are beat all to pieces because they just kind of squeeze past one another, right? They don't have that social contract. And to them, that's as normal as us driving on the right side of the road. In European countries, they drive on the left side of the road. To them, that's their social contract. They just agreed upon that. We could have easily have agreed on that, but that's just not the way we decided to do it. Our cars are built differently, so to accommodate that. Here's what I want you to do next. As a next step for this essay, I want you to do two things. One, somewhere on that essay, I would like for you to write the APA reference. You have enough material to do that. So you're going to have to think about what this entry is. This is actually an article or an essay from an anthology. An anthology is a collection of works by different authors that's edited by an author of the book. So if you go to Purdue Al APA, look for an essay from an anthology that has an editor. So you're going to have to put together several bits and pieces. I've given you the bibliographic information for the book as a whole. So these are the editors. This is the title of the book as a whole. But I want you to cite the actual essay. So Solomon Asch is the author of the essay. It's called Opinions and Social Pressure, and it appears in a book edited by Behrens and Rawson, published in 2008. So try to figure out how to put all that together in a correct APA citation, and we'll check it tomorrow. And then if you haven't done so already, just for the Asch essay, so it begins at the top of page 352 and ends where the review questions are, I want you to either highlight or underline maybe 3 to 5 pieces of evidence that you would cite, summarize, directly quote if you were writing the essay today. So figure out what pieces of evidence, and this is going to help you when you write the essay, because after we've read 4 essays and you go back to this one, you'll have it already highlighted, already marked, that these are pieces of information that you might quote in your essay. So write the APA reference and find 3 to 5 pieces of information to highlight or underline that you could cite.